Okay, let's start. I'm Moti, and it's a pleasure to give this tutorial together with Xian Tang. And we are going to talk about cryptography, post-Snowden cryptography. And what are we going to cover? So we are going to start with the historical perspective, the overview of the background and its recent implication. This is more than 20 years old, but it's got revived recently due to the circumstances. And then the second part is going to be Cliptography, clipping the power of kleptography, this more recent and coming results. Okay, so I will, I'm the older of us two, so I will cover the older part. I'll talk about kleptography, old warnings and new threats. So this will be the first part. And I'll talk about kleptographic attacks. So you know, kleptography sounds like cryptography, but it has, instead of secret writing, is a stealing of your writing, klepto. And the new implications. So the background for this research is the mid-90s. At that point, crypto is considered to be the big equalizer. The small guys can protect themselves against government. And there is the time of the crypto wars, where the government, the US government tries to dictate crypto chips to all big manufacturers. And then due to problems in the concept, in the implementation, and so on, I worked on bypassing the authentication of the Clipper chip, for example. So the crypto community was ready to show it. And it seemed at the time that the crypto war was open, and open cryptography is now to be open. And some of the kleptographic work was in order to formally describe why black boxes that are given by the government are not to be trusted in a formal way. And there was an impression that everybody can be a cryptographer. There was the book on applied cryptography. You know, you need to finish high school and you are essentially a cryptographer. And for thousands of years, crypto was considered as a protective technology, protecting of messages and so on, and protecting of origin of messages, essentially protective. Even if the message itself may be not protective, you may be plot and a war, still cryptography was used as protection. So we started to investigate the use of crypto as a weapon, as an attack technology. And these are the old warning. And as part of this investigation, we started in a field that we started the cryptovirology, in the sense that you can embed the cryptography in malware, and predicted ransomware also about 15, 20 years before they came into life in real world. And another thing was kleptography, to really investigate what you can do in the implementation under the hood when nobody sees. So when the cryptography is under the hood, of course you can do simple attack that people can understand immediately. For example, you can fix a pseudorandom number generator. Like all your chips are going to have the same generator, the same seed, or just a few seeds if you wish, but not the full strength of a random seeding of a generator. You can use a weak algorithm version inside the box and so on. And these were known at the time, but those are essentially detectable in a black box sense. You know, you order 1,000 chips, and you see that there are, in 1,000 chips, there are only, you run the generator in some sense, and you see that there are only 5 types of them. So you know that something is wrong, you know? And so these are easily detectable. But what we thought about is algorithm replacement attack, that under the hood you replace the algorithm, either for symmetric or asymmetric cryptography, which is a little bit different. Because we wanted those breakings, those trapdoors, to be undetectable. And in a sense, exclusive trapdoors, that only the attacker can exploit it. In some sense, exclusivity of the backdoor, and you show that it is, and you prove that it is exclusive to the attacker. And back to the 90s, so public key is great, RSA is great, everybody knows RSA, it's based on multiples of 2 primes, n equal p times q, and you take a message. I'm giving the textbook version of RSA, know the way it should be practiced. But the encryption C is m to the e mod n. E is a public exponent. It doesn't imply the knowledge of D, which is E inverse mod phi of n. But the receiver who owns the key and knows the factorization can compute D and take C to the D and recovers M. Okay? And essentially, you need to know the factorization to really break this RSA function. There are provable cases, but we don't know better in some sense. So the system is called asymmetric cryptography. This asymmetry is because only the owner of the key can decrypt. It has special power. It can compute D, which is the inverse of E. And this asymmetry is great because we don't need to meet. I can send you a certificate, you know that it's me, and you can send me an encrypted message and I get it. Because, so you have an encryption key, and it doesn't imply the decryption key. And further on, this asymmetry was used to solve some paradoxical problems like oblivious transfer, mental poker, and so on. Protocols that people develop using the different power of the 2 parties. One knowing how to decrypt, the other guy doesn't know how to decrypt, and you can run. It breaks the symmetry of knowledge, and this enables the protocol to overcome some impossibility from information theoretic point of view. So now we thought about Krypton, the attack. Can we have cryptographic Trojan horse, backdoor, that are robust against reverse engineering? In the sense that if you are not dead at the time that the algorithm runs, and you come later and you reverse engineer the device, you don't know what was done before. Namely, you have to use like real randomness. You cannot use something that you see after the fact. And these Trojans are useful for the attacker. It's an asymmetric backdoor. And the attacker needs to eavesdrop on the messages, and he is the manufacturer itself. He inserted the trapdoor. So there is otherwise the system looks like the other system to anyone. So to anyone it looks secure. You can even have a proof of security. But there is also the proof of breaking that this guy with the extra knowledge can break the system, this exclusivity. And in the first paper, we already wrote that certain organizations will love to have this type of trapdoor. Why certain organizations? Because they love to break crypto for whatever reason. Not just they love to break crypto, they want to be the only guy in town that can break crypto. This is the exclusivity. Okay? In this way, they can sell everybody security from everybody except themselves. And, we encounter some criticism initially about it, and it takes time to understand this concept and so on. But some people understood. So cryptography is the study of stealing information securely, this exclusivity, and in some sense subliminally, in an unnoticeable way, and really stealing your trapdoor, stealing from your hardware protecting system that is used for cryptography, the main secrets. And essentially it employs crypto against crypto. Because we need to prove too many properties, exclusivity and security. So you have to use some cryptographic mechanism, that was the thinking, and so to hiding crypto inside crypto. And it can use the asymmetry of public key, of asymmetric key. Namely, the manufacturer can put something in the chip without meeting anyone, and then it can produce the job. And this was presented actually in a conference in 96, Crypto 96. And this is a little bit different view of cryptography, is like cryptography as an attack tool. And it was in the same session that introduced the physical leakage attacks that are more benign, but nevertheless also gave a fresh view of cryptography, that it's not enough to prove mathematically that the crypto system works. When you deal with implementation, you have to show that physical characteristics of the implementations benignly do not leak the key. And our paper was about malicious manufacturers that causes you to leak the key. So no wonder the committee decided to put the two papers in the same session. So what is the goal again? It's a robust backdoor, so it gives exclusivity, as I said. Only the attacker, only the manufacturer can get it. It has to be indistinguishable from if I have an implementation which is under attack or regular implementation for all other participants in the system. But the attacker, it looks that it's the same system. It has to have this forward secrecy. If you reverse engineer the device after or even before the mechanism took place and there is some key that was generated and used, you cannot break it. You have to be there. The successful reverse engineer, as said there, can learn that there was an attack, but because there is a different algorithm maybe and so on, but it's not good for him to get the knowledge. So there is this exclusivity is protected over time, even against the reverse engineer. So there's an asymmetry of the public key technology is used here between the attacker himself, which is who is the manufacturer, and the reverse engineer. So what I am going to present in my part is a cryptographic attack on RSA key generation, which motivates something that we called secretly embedded trapdoor with universal protection. We called it this way so that the initial will come to be set up, because this type of attack sets you up. And then I will present the cryptographic attack on the DiffieHellman key exchange, and I will talk a little bit about implications, and then I will talk about much more recent threats. Okay. So what I will present is a cryptographic theft of the RSA private key. So we want to have this trapdoor, we want this indistinguishability and all these properties. And actually, it's not just on RSA, but any crypto mechanism that is based on the factoring problem. It's an attack on factoring. So if, but let's go to RSA as an example. Normal RSA key generation is essentially the following algorithm. You know, I choose algorithms that fit in one slide. So I can describe it. So assume that there is that the exponent, the public exponent E is chosen a priori. Popular one is 2 to the 16 plus 1, for example, or 3, because it makes encryption fast. So what is the algorithm? Step 1, choose a random number P. Let's say we are doing RSA 2048, so P of size 1024 bits. We check that P is a composite and that GCD, the greatest common divisor of E and P minus 1, is 1. And if it doesn't, we run primality test, and this GCD test kind of, let's call it compatibility test. So if it passes the compatibility test, you choose P. Otherwise, you go back to 1 and choose another P. Once P is chosen, you do the same thing with Q. You choose a large number Q, you check the compatibility conditions. If not, you choose again. If yes, you have your P, you have your Q, you multiply them, and you have your N. That's it, very simple. So now, what do we do with this? What do we do with this? So now we want to devise, we give you a box, we claim it does this RSA key gen, but it will do something else. So the owner of the public key will still get n equals p times q, which is a 2048 bits, a multiple of 2 primes, and it will have the same security with respect to everyone that the previous algorithm does. But in the box, there will be an RSA key of the attacker, of the manufacturer. Let's call it Y, and Y is half the size, let's say 1024-bit RSA, which is a multiple of 2 prime, Y1 times Y2. Okay? Half the size. And this is only the attacker. So this is Y is inside the system, the multiple of 2 primes. The primes are only known to the attacker, they are not in the box. So here is the attack, and this will explain to you those attacks. In the paper, we need to prove all these things, but here I just hand wave and explain to you why this is a good attack. So the first bullet, the key generation algorithm is modified to contain the crypto Trojan, so it has this Y. And then the step starts. So the first step, choose a large value S randomly, 1024 bits. Compute P, which is age of S, to it. Age of S is also 1024. Age is a cryptographic, let's say, pseudorandom function. It is in all devices or something. S is chosen truly randomly. Then the function age applies to it, and you get P. And then in step 3, you run the compatibility thing, the primality test and so on, the GCD and so on. If it fails, if it's a composite, if P is a composite, go back and choose again. Choose a new S, take age of the new S, and so on. At some point, because of the distribution of prime and because age is essentially a random function and it chooses a random value, at some point with some large enough probability due to the distribution of primes. The same reason that it works for the original RSA, P is going to be prime. So you're not going to stay in the loop forever, and you are going to stay essentially in the loop the same time you loop on choosing P when you choose it directly at random. Otherwise, it's a proof that age is not a random function, if it differs. Okay, so we have our P. And now we choose a large 1024-bit string, RND, this RND, and we compute C, which is an encryption, under the RSA public key, Y, which was the 1024-bit RSA, C equal S to the E mod Y. I use the same exponent, doesn't matter. So let me go to the slide. So I have R&D, which is random, and I have C, which is S to the E. And now I solve for Q and R, quotient and the remainder. You take the number C, concatenated with R&D, and I now treat it as a number of 2048 bits. And I solve it against P. It gives me a quotient and remainder. Like integer division, yes? This is Q and this is R. If Q is composite and doesn't pass the GCD and so on, I go back to the beginning. Believe me, these operations, this is random, and S is random, this is division and this P. It takes a little bit more proof work, but it's not so hard to show that Q is essentially another random choice. So after a while, I iterate, I find P and Q that are both primes. Then I just output N equals PQ, NE. And I can tell you, you know, this is just a nice way, a fastest way, or whatever, less random way, you know. I have here a random generator, and here, you know. I can tell you a lot of stories if you see the spec. If you don't see the spec, you don't even suspect. You get N equals PQ, you choose. If I give you even P and Q and you do statistical tests, these are going to be good. So N is 2048. So remember C, so C R&D interpreted as a number is PQ plus R, the remainder. And which means that if I take this number and I subtract R, I get N. And there is since P, I was dividing by P, and R is a remainder, so it's smaller than P, so it's about square root of N, smaller than P, and I claim that this operation does not contaminate this number too much. And this number is exactly N. So the fact that P and Q are so chosen is the prime number theorem, and The private key is recovered as following. The attacker obtains the public key, N, essentially, and he takes the part that's supposed to be C, and the part plus 1, because the claim is that by reducing R, at most 1 bit, borrow bit from the part that is C. So either this is C, or if I borrowed a bit, this is C. And the attacker knows how to decrypt, because C was S to the E mod Y, the public key of the attacker. Understood? So one of those decryption value, S1 on S2, one of them is going to give me P. Because age is a public random function, I know that given S, this is the way P was generated. Because if you go back to the key generation algorithm, P was generated from S, and that's the idea. And the idea was that S is used twice, one under this public random function, or public if you know the device, and the second time with the public key encryption of the attacker. So this is the recovery. So only the attacker can perform this operation, because this involves decryption. He has to attempt 2 ciphertexts. One of them is the correct ciphertext. Anybody else looking at N, even if it knows that this is either C1 or C2, is the encryption of something that was used pseudorandomly to, via random function to generate the P, it doesn't get it. You need to invert RSA. And this leads to the definition of a setup. So a setup is an implementation C prime that supposedly gives you something that supposedly gives you the same thing as the original implementation. C is the RSA irregular key generation. C prime is the second one that I showed you. Both of them should hold, be efficient algorithms, and actually we did statistical testing on essentially a variant of the algorithm that I showed you here as a setup, and the original key gen, and using the same programmer and the same tools, and sometimes sometimes this was taking more time. These are both randomized, and depending on the choice, and with timing you cannot tell. Output indistinguishability is that C and C prime gives you the same output, and in a paper that we wrote, and is in the thesis of the PhD who worked on that, there is a proof that if you can distinguish, you essentially break the RSA of the attacker in some sense, or something like this. There is confidentiality. Both of them hide in the same way. So C prime and C in these examples give equally good RSA with respect to anybody else but the attacker. Both C and C prime. And except for the attacker who can compromise C prime. Okay, so this was the starting point. So with all the proofs, it shows formally that there is an implementation of RSA that black box wise, with statistical tests on many outputs, will not be detectable. And the formal aspect, there is a formal security model and definition. The design employs all the tools of modern cryptography, randomness and indistinguishability and probability distribution and prime number theorem and random oracle or random function assumption. And there's a proof of security of the design. And the proof is actually more complicated because we have to show that it is secure, it is well distributed in a large enough sub-exponential domain of RSA keys. And so namely, if this is insecure, then RSA keys are likely every once in a while to be insecure. And that the hidden channel, the channel to the adversary, is also secured based on its key. And it's kind of fun to use formal methodology to prove insecurity, to prove that there is a leakage to the attacker. Okay, but everybody who is wondering, the security of the attacker is half the size of the security of the design, because the RSA is half the size. So the question is, can we do better? And let's leave it open for a while. And move next to do the Diffie-Hellman key exchange attack. So another important operation in modern cryptography, besides signing with RSA or encrypting with RSA, is Diffie-Hellman key exchange. So what the attack that I'm going to show applies generically to any regardless of the algebra, any place where there is the Diffie-Hellman, which means the discrete log is hard in a group. But for concreteness, I call it P, B a large prime, G is an element in GP star of order Q, just for concreteness. I could have done it on elliptic curve groups or something like this. This is just for the simplest. And for example, Q can be a prime and P equals strong prime, 2Q plus 1. That doesn't matter. But in this setting, just for concreteness, P and Q are public. And what is the Diffie-Hellman key exchange is Alice and Bob. So Alice chooses an exponent A, G to the A, mod P, send it to Bob. Bob does the same, B equals G to the B, send it to Alice. Alice takes what comes from Bob, raises it to A, call it K, this is the key. Bob computes A, what goes from Alice to the small b, and it's also K. Why? Because of commutativity of exponentiation, that we all learn, I think, in first grade or something. But it applies also not just on integers. B to the A, capital B to the A is capital A to the B. They are both essentially G to the B to the A, G to the A to the B, and therefore it's the same value. Okay? Okay, and this is secure. There is the Diffie-Hellman assumption, and there is the decisional Diffie-Hellman assumption that tells us that the entire element, resulting element within the group is indistinguishable from a random one. And there is asymmetry here. If you know A or B, you can compute the joint key from the value exchanged in the protocol. If you don't, then under these assumptions, you cannot do it. Now there is a little bit difference from RSA. The RSA key generation has a large subliminal channel in it. I mean, I can fix ahead of time half of the bits of n and still do it, and this was exploited. Subliminal channel was exploited by us in a certain way to have the subverted implementation. But DiffieHellman don't have, because you can only have log of the size of the exponent of the security parameter subliminal channel and try to repeatedly exponentiate so that these bits are leaked or something like this. We don't know any subliminal channel of bigger size. And this was noted in the literature on subliminal channel before our work. So we knew that. So the question is, if we want to do subversion, do we need subliminal channel? Because it was very instrumental with the RSA to plug in on the high order bits, almost something that leads to recovery of a prime. Is it needed? So, computer science is the science of things that you can design yourself. So the answer is, if there isn't one, create one. So, after all, if there is no subliminal channel, there is still a lot of randomness in the choice of exponent. And this may help us to set up communication channels to the adversary, which is the manufacturer. So you can preset the box so that you will get something. So we will try something like exploiting the randomness this time, rather than exploiting subliminal channel to generate something. So we consider the setting of the DiffieHellman box. The attacker can deploy the setup attack, let's say on Alice device. Again, this is just an example. Symmetrically, it can be the other way, but doesn't matter. Passively, it eavesdrops on the exchange. And the black box, that's essentially the only thing that we added. The black box can store state information across invocation of the exchange. Okay? That's needed. And the goal of the setup on DiffieHellman is to permit the malicious manufacturer to learn, let's say, every other DiffieHellman shared secret key. And yeah, that's essentially the idea. And with respect to the reverse engineer, okay, we now extend before I told you the reverse engineer has to be in the device at the time of the attack, so he has to be in the device. In order for the attack to work, he shouldn't be in the device in the first and the second exchange, rather than only the second, even though we subvert the second. So, how the attacker is going to manufacture his DiffieHellman box? He's going to generate his own DiffieHellman key. Choose a private key, XM. M is the manufacturer or the malicious attacker or whatever you want. And just a regular exponent chosen at random. And the secret key is kept only to the attacker, not put in the box. What's put in the box is the YM, which is G to this secret exponent, which is placed inside the box or the chip or whatever that implements Alice's key exchange. Okay? And we have also, let's say, a hash function that maps into the queue in the box. So the intuition behind the attack, first, before I present it, is that now the attacker generated some capability. He generated a capability that he has a private key XM, and he put in the box YM. So if the box can talk to him and send him and send him and let's say the key is like YM to the A, something in the box, and G to the A is going to be public, the attacker using commutativity can move this G to the A to YM to the A, because it knows XM, and G to the XM is YM. So the same thing as DiffieHellman, the logic of the DiffieHellman commutativity. Okay? So here is the attack. So the first execution is just G to the A1, G to the B1, and the common key is G to the A1, B1. That's it. Nothing to the attacker. And then Alice device has to choose A2 at random. But instead of doing it at random, it takes YM to the A1, hashes it to the right domain, and this is A2, and raises A2, G to the A2, this is capital A2, Bob does what Bob does, G to the B2, and the common key is G to the A2, B2. Okay? Where is the catch? The catch is that there is a relation between G to the A1 that was sent in the first instance and YM to the A1 that was used in the second instance. And the attacker witnessed the exchange G to the A1. And the attacker, and only the attacker who knows XM, can translate exactly this value to this value. So what did we do? We claimed that the box was participating in two DiffieHellman key exchange. Yes? But in actuality, there were three. One, covert one, between the box and the attacker, the manufacturer. All right? So here is it says the attacker, can take A1, which was G to the small A1, which raise it to the XM, which is exactly YM to the A1, which was used in the generation of the randomness of the second thing. Can apply H to it, and that's it. We said if anybody knows A2 or B2, it can generate from the exchange the common key, and this way the attacker got the common key. By the way, by the way that the second exponent was chosen by Alice, not purely random, but in this pseudo-random way, depending on the first execution. So randomness, the way you treat randomness, can affect whether you can, there is some subversion or not. Okay? Questions? Okay. I see no question, but I cannot see much because I never wished to be in the limelight in my life, and now it's killing me. So you can show confidentiality with respect to the reverse engineer. The reverse engineer learns YM, but you need XM. So he needs to do discrete log in order to be as effective as the manufacturer. And that's a problem. And that's it. So next idea, which is in the original paper, which was published Eurocrypt 97. So it's more than 20 years ago, that we can continue the idea and chain repeatedly, generating A3 essentially as some function of Y3 to the A2, and A4 is YM to the A3, just repeating the idea. So I can do 15 times forward, yes? Each time exploiting the knowledge, the software of the attack on the previous value. Not just on A1, also on A2, A3, A15, and so on. And we called it in the paper the T out of T plus 1 setup attack on DiffieHellman key exchange. It's kind of repeating the same logic that I explained, the hidden exchange, just because the attacker knows the discrete log of this generator that was used here. He knows XM, so he knows G to the XM is YM, so he can. And later on, what was interesting about the DiffieHellman attack, that in a subsequent paper, we extended it to essentially all the system, all the system that we knew and cared, that use the exponentiation and DDH assumption, and it was very popular at the time. Like and even it applies to systems like Kramer-Shoup that were developed after we had the attack. So we were attacking Kramer-Shoup before it existed. So, but El-Gamal encryption, signature, El-Gamal signature. The interesting part is the DSA signature, in which you work in a large group, but the size of the signature is just 320 bits. So you say, oh, I don't have subliminal channel just because I sent so succinct message. No, in the middle of the verification, some big exponent shows up. And this enables embedding of this kleptogram, if you wish. Okay, so there are variations. And later on, we started working on small space kleptograms in RSA. So the first attack was RSA of half the size of RSA. So apparently you don't need to do it this way. You can exploit the security with respect to size of elliptic curves versus RSA. Use elliptic curve as the inner attacker's crypto, and have a more succinct ciphertext with the same security to the attacker as the security of the RSA. But you need to assume elliptic curve discrete log. Okay? And we showed for certain subliminal channel and node detection that you can use the twisted pair of binary curves for certain things, and in this embedding inside the RSA, because you want the bits to be distributed randomly. You don't want them to be biased by the algebraic structure of the discrete log problem. So that's why we started paying attention to this, where values look like almost like strings. And later on, essentially we were hiding some cryptographic tools in other cryptographic functions, and we typically use random oracle-like argument, not necessarily random oracle, because you still, if you are doing it in a black box, you can have a pseudorandom function acting as a random oracle. But we also showed attack on RSA, which is purely algebraic. That's exactly where we needed the twisted pair. And one more things that we did, and this was a cryptographic attack on symmetric cipher. So we embedded asymmetric cipher inside the symmetric cipher to show that you can do the similar attacks on symmetric ciphers, exploiting either redundancy in the message or things like this. So you can compress the message, and then you have some extra room in the message to send the bits that you need from the application of the asymmetric encryption of the key and things like this. So once you get into this mode of attacks, you attempt to attack everything. And actually, I once gave a talk, and I said, and somebody who designed some system jumped in the middle, and he made some comment, and I said, don't get insulted, we also attack your system. So it's just because the attacks are in some sense showing prototypical methods of attack. Okay, and then so people believe that it's a nice theory, and who cares? It appeared in crypto, and it's yet another theory paper in crypto. But then the miracle year of 2013 arrived, and why should we care? So if you look at the repeated DiffieHellman kleptogram, in which you take A1 and you use G to the A1, and then you somehow compute with another generator A2, and you take G to the A2, and so on repeatedly, the repeated DiffieHellman, or the T out of T plus 1 DiffieHellman. So look at it as a pseudorandom generator. Think about the top line of advancing the internal state of the pseudorandom generator. And the bottom line is the output of the pseudorandom generator, in some sense. And then these pseudorandom bits are used to whatever cryptographic task that you want. They are used as a secret pseudorandom bits. So the attacker can derive the top position, I plus first, this one, from the public output. Because he knows how to take G to the A1, raise it to the XM, and get YM to the H1, and H is easy. So there is a backdoor here. And this is exactly the logic behind the dual EC. It's just, well, it's the same thing. It's just, I use multiplicative notation, and here I use, the curve multiplication is like exponentiation, and it's the same thing. And that there is some hashing and some chopping, but these are just obfuscating the core. So again, the top line is advancing the state, the bottom line is the bits, and this guy in the corner leaked that this is being used, and this was even verified in the context of SSL TLS. how it's being used. Some random bits here are used in the handshake as a completely random bits, and the next random bits are used for the cryptography. But the attacker knows from here to get the seed of the rest, so it's broken. And that's exactly what this guy claimed. And well, it's not just theory. There is people kind of implemented it for what what I showed you in 2 slides. People took the effort to implement and show it on. It's nice to verify on their own generators. Okay, and this kind of trapdoors were found in the real. Okay, so what does it mean? I mean, the logic of the dual elliptic curve generator was not put in a hardware box. It was given as a specification with a proof of security. And the reason for using it, the declared reason, was we need a provably secure blah, 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 blah random generator. And the attacker has plausible deniability. If he doesn't know the relations between the 2 generators in the elliptic curve notation P and Q, then it's perfectly secure. So the attacker presented an algorithm. It doesn't look like the RSA twisted way of choosing primes. It looks natural. 2 generators moving forward, one updating the state, another one spilling out random bits. Wow, there is a proof of security. If these are 2 random generators chosen by God or by whoever, perfect, I have a proof of security. I claim this is important. The attacker did not have to be too creative to make the algorithm, just to algebraic obfuscate. Read the Crypto 97 paper and change the domain, and I call it mind obfuscation. They spill out specification that is not. They are moving the obfuscation from the implementation level to the specification level with mind obfuscation. And this is something to be careful about. So we need to take care of both. Both the specification, but we actually do, but also the implementation, which we actually don't, need care. And with proof of security, it looks very compelling. And using proof of security against other or some other arguments, better proof, faster, speedy, like, in this conference, we are going to see Roca, which is another compelling reason to use specialized composite generation because of speed and so on. But, essentially the specification is contaminated. If you go and try to read the standards, like I tried sometimes, FIPS 142, you try to read it and you go. They win by exhaustion because they tell you, use here, go to the appendix, go back to here, go to the appendix, go to this document, come back here, depend on this, appendix 55, B. Who is going to read it? It's completely obfuscated. They win by exhaustion. I get tired, maybe somebody younger than me should read and do it. And then the implementers, they go and they do it, but they're not professional cryptographers until professional cryptographers look at it, look at the implementation, and it collapses. And that's one example. It happened. So the spirit of kleptography is alive, both on the implementation level, that's for sure, I'm sure, and implementation level when they can get away with it. And once it's embedded and multiplied, and in zillion and a half hardware devices, how can you stop? Then you have compatibility, the sacred notion of compatibility. Okay, so I hope I gave you a nice survey on the old results and why they matter, and motivated you to look at cryptography as specified and cryptographic implementation. And in this part, I talked about cryptographic backdoors, and I claimed that the fact that it is obfuscated and hidden, and you have a proof of security in the cryptography, also carried to the specification level. They always specify something, some aspects of it is secure, the insecure part is hidden. But we have to be smart. We are learning. I showed setup attack on RSA, setup attack on DiffieHellman and its applications. What was shown before is that hiding algorithm implementation in hardware, which was the common wisdom at the time. Consultant went to banks and told them the only crypto that you can really trust is the hardware. and a very famous cryptographer almost fell from his chair when I presented the RSA attack. And he understood immediately and told me the whole trust issue is moved from the hardware to trusting the manufacturer, which is the right trust. So hardware has dark side, and this killed the capstone and this chip and that chip, and the government is going to be your babysitter with respect to cryptography. And presenting an algorithm with hidden random constant is similarly dangerous because they move the klepto preprocessing into the specification. Dangerous. So in all these schemes, we have proof of security of the system against all but the attacker, and a second proof of exclusivity, which is security for the attacker against the other attacker. So in some sense, it's harder to do proofs, to do modern cryptography for kleptography because it's two proofs. Usually you get a paper with one proof, but here you needed two proofs. We know that cryptography is about security, about solving seemingly paradoxical schemes, but it's also about looking at things that no one will ever look at. Like the hardware, if you are naive and trust something and you don't look, cryptography can generate problems for you. So it's like hacking with purpose, it's strange places, I say. This is part of cryptography. And people say it, but they don't really follow it in reality. They say attack on a crypto system or any system can be in the implementation, in the specific. Everybody says it, people sing it. But they don't verify it. They don't apply trustworthy methodology. And the methodology that there are, like the FIPS, I don't know if they are there to make you diligent or to make you negligent. Because who knows who wrote them or who drove them. And the bottom line is attacks on implementations evolve, and implementation is the most neglected part. People take it, they say, oh, how many times I heard people implementing crypto saying, oh, I use this package. Oh, I use that package. Oh, I use this. How do you use it? What do you use it? Where do you put your secret key? The fact that you have crypto doesn't give you any security if you don't take care of the whole system around it. I mean, it's very naive to think that you can read the Applied Cryptography edition 2 and can secure the world. So I think that's the end of the first part. Should we take 5-minute break?